4 days to go until the midterms, and it's spin, baby, spin from the Democrats and the media. President Biden setting the tone and straight up lying to the American people about the lousy state of the economy and kitchen table issues.
Let's take a look at the facts. When I took office, this economy was in ruins. The economy is up, price inflation is down, real incomes are up, gas prices are down and need to come down further. Exports are also up, which means a simple thing. We're making a lot of money in America because of that.
You think that's crazy? Biden's friends in the media are taking things to the next level by claiming Republicans made up the term inflation to help them win.
The only people I ever hear use the word inflation are journalists and economists, right? So that is not part of the normal lexicon of the way people talk. So it's interesting that Republicans are doing something they don't normally do, right? Which is not use the common tongue, right? Not use just common English to sort of do on their campaigns like they're doing with crime. But what they've done is they've taught people the word inflation, right? Yeah. Most people who would have never used that word ever in their lives are using it now because they've been taught.
So inflation is just some Republican-created talking point. But what about crime? While people are being randomly attacked and killed in the streets, Hillary Clinton says it's just a vast right-wing conspiracy.
I've seen, I'm sure you have, well, maybe you don't watch television, but if you did, you would see what I see, which are ads about crime every 30 seconds, right? No solutions, but just a lot of really fearful, scary pictures and scary music. They don't care about keeping you safe. They want to keep you scared.
And after a poll showed white suburban women moving to Republicans in a massive 27-point swing. Leave it to liberal filmmaker Michael Moore to tell us what women voters really want.
To believe that we're going to lose on Tuesday and that they're going to take over, you have to accept certain assumptions. For instance, you have to believe what the pollsters and people have been telling us that since the Roe decision, women were very upset back in June when the decision came down. But now, they've kind of collected themselves and they're not so upset because they're thinking more about the price of a gallon of gas or the can of Campbell's soup is up 27 cents. I mean, it's so condescending. Do you really think that women are just over it? Over Roe?
You know what's interesting about that, Dana, is he talks about condescending. I think he's condescending and sexist to presume what women want in this election, as if they don't buy groceries, they don't fill up their car with gas. What's with him?
It's also, well, it's not just him, but like for Joy Reid to suggest that people don't understand what the word inflation means. Like we all went to school, we understand what it is. But even if you never heard the word, you know what it feels like because that's what they've been dealing with for several months now, and they're looking at even worse going into 2023. So they know that. That's why people are looking for change. That's not hard to understand. And you take what he said about women, like, are they over Roe? No, they're not. Maybe they're not over Roe, but they also have understood, oh, the states are going to deal with this. And let's say you live in a state like New York, nothing changes for you on abortion. Okay, then your main issue, which is affordability for housing, your electricity bills that are going up, the school fees that went up, all the gas and groceries that you have to deal with. Maybe you're taking care of aging parents. Mm-hmm. All of those costs are bearing down. And women actually take a lot on. They're stretched, right? They're taking care of the kids and they're taking care of elderly parents. They're also trying to work at the same time. So super condescending reminds me of what Sunny Houston said yesterday, that any woman that's going to vote for a Republican is like a roach. It's almost incomprehensible because you can't imagine, like, if you had said that, Judge.
Well, that was going to be my next question.
Right?
Which is, Jesse, assume that I said, what Sunny Houston said was that white suburban women are roaches heading toward raid. If I said that black suburban women were roaches heading toward anything, I'd be fired.
Bye, Jeanine.
Yeah.
It's nice knowing you.
Yeah.
Didn't Trump say Baltimore was rat-infested and that was a 3-week story?
Yep.
I do remember that. First of all, with Joy, we didn't teach anybody anything. Carter taught us about inflation. Joe just reminded us. This is what I call the Republican pounce attack. This is, you're not really scared of crime. Republicans are scaring you. or, you didn't know anything about high prices until Republicans taught you about high prices. Johnny goes out to Manhattan and he talks to New Yorkers who don't watch Fox. Johnny doesn't scare anybody. Look at Johnny. He's not that scary. Also, Johnny doesn't teach anybody anything except maybe who won the Civil War. So you get a situation where Hillary's out there saying this is a vast right-wing conspiracy. Well, her husband signed a bill by Joe Biden to reduce crime in the 90s. Was that a scary, vast right-wing conspiracy? And I don't remember the Republicans owning the media. I think the Democrats own the media and teach us everything. Michael Moore, I have found, Jeanine, in my 40-plus years, it's not a good idea to tell women what they think. I've found it is a better idea to listen to women and then summarize what they think. There's two scenarios.
Write that down.
The polls are either right or Michael Moore knows more about what women want than women. I don't think that's the case.
You know what's interesting, Harold? I mean, you've got Hillary Clinton denying. The woman lives in New York. Crime is the #1 issue in New York State. And she says, we're just trying to scare them, which reminds me of Jen Psaki. I'll never forget this. She's looking up at the TV and she's saying, I'm watching Fox. Why is Jeanine Pirro talking about crime? What is wrong with these people?
So I'm glad that everything's well with your hand. I was worried about you yesterday, and I'm glad you're back.
You were worried yesterday? Thanks for the
I
email.
I sent you a text. Two things. This is what happens at the end of campaigns. I mean, Dana knows this as well and practiced this. Like, I was on a ballot at the end of a campaign, and when things are not going your way or they're going your way, you try to outline things that are going your way or try to deflate or dismiss or, for a matter, belittle the things that are not. There's some things that are straining the notion of accuracy. I would agree that some of my friends in my party are saying things that may not necessarily altogether be true. But again, there's a long tradition of that in America. I think at the end of a campaign, I think the thing that's most refreshing is that it appears that the lines have been drawn in the campaign. Democrats care deeply about freedom of choice. Democrats care deeply about the affordability of drug prices, and Democrats care deeply about supporting Ukraine. Some of your Republican friends and old colleagues of mine, and even ones I didn't serve with, have said that if Republicans get the majority, that the Ukrainians won't get a penny more or a dime more from the country.
No, that's not what they said. No, that's
well,
not
Marjorie Taylor Greene said Republicans would not provide another dime to Ukraine. Now, we may not, but Dana,
majority position.
That's like saying that Rick Scott
Dana,
speaks for all Republicans when it comes to
But Dana, you can't assign AOC to me, and you can't assign Sonny Hostin to me. I'm only saying, look, I like this. But we do. You sometimes say Democrats want to enable. I mean, look, I don't get offended by it. I don't take it personally. It's politics. So you can't get, let me finish my point. You can't get offended when Democrats are firing back as well. This is real-time, high-stakes politics. Democrats believe that if Republicans take the majority, things are going to change. There will be a lot of investigations in the country. I think Hillary Clinton is right in one regard. I've not heard the Republicans say what they're going to do about energy. If you believe we should not fund Ukraine, listen to me one second. If you believe we should not fund Ukraine, then you're saying you want gas prices to be higher because that means that Putin is in a stronger position.
Harold, you need to read the Commitment to America.
No.
Well, what about the renewal?
There.
But Dana, there's a renewal to America also that Scott is doing. The Commitment to America is what McCarthy's doing. So I'm saying at some point, all these issues should be on the table.
All right, let's
Everybody
talk
gets
about what
uncomfortable when we give
reality
the
is.
issue.
Reality is Hillary Clinton saying that crime is something crazy.
She's wrong about that.
She's wrong.
I would agree.
That was my question.
No, I would
All
agree
right,
with you on
on to
that.
you, Bill.
What about Ukraine?
Nobody's talking about Ukraine
I want to thank
now.
Harold for having me here tonight.
Very nice.
That's what I'd like
All right,
to do.
now, what Harold
And I'd
said,
like to
and
make
I
a
wrote
motion,
this-
Judge.
What was your motion?
My motion is,
Counselor?
raise your right hand. I would like to have this election tonight because we're going to wait for the damn thing for 6 months. And we're ready to go. With regard to the spin, I would just say watch the margin of the difference between Republicans and Democrats on Tuesday. That's either going to crush the spin or it's going to help it live for another day. With regard to cockroaches, they really liked them in 2020. Now, not so much based on what we're hearing from the early voting and the way that women have moved away from Democrats toward Republicans.
Yeah.
I voted yesterday in New York. I got the handband to prove it. New York is the most extraordinary voting experience you will ever have. You go in the booth. Am I wrong about this?
I went today.
The state Supreme Court justices are all D's. There's not a Republican on the ballot. You have 4 initiatives. The first one is to spend an additional $400 billion in New York State.
I thought it was 40.
$400 billion on climate change.
Get my
I
vote
thought
back.
that's
I
what the
voted.
inflation
New York State?
in New York State. That's proposition number 1. And then there's a few others about
Hard
equity.
pass.
There's a racial equity commission they want to put in the city charter. and a true cost of living provision. The president said the economy was in ruins when he came into office, right? And there was no plan for the pandemic. The plan was the vaccine, and the vaccine was well underway.
And it worked.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.